So, Kamal, would you like to introduce yourself and we'll go around everyone?
Yeah, hi. I hope I am audible. Yeah. So I am Kamal. I am a senior scientist in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, which is one of the most prestigious medical university hospital in our country. And my area of research is medical leadership. And I have been in Warwick for some time in 2019 and then Oxford last year for about 2 months. And I'm currently collaborating with UCL with Professor Jolie Davis, and we have got a project, funded project approved for carrying out a comparative study about medical leadership in England and India. So this is what we are currently working, and I think it fits very well in the theme of today's webinar, engaging in international research collaborations.
Great, so I'll just introduce myself if that's okay. So I'm at the Global Business School for Health, which is a startup business school at UCL. I'm an associate editor for HRDR and co-chair with Carol on the Research Development Committee for UFHRD. And I guess my research interests are qualitative research, particularly looking at leadership. So I've just published a book on leading business schools and small businesses, gender and research impact, my main areas. So I'm really pleased to be a part of this AIIMS New Delhi UCL research funded project, which we'll explain in a while. Shall we go around and ask everyone else?
Yes, that's great. Yeah. So, Photius, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, just give me a second because I was trying to find Oliver's email to forward him.
Oh, right.
It's okay, no worries.
Oliver's arrived.
So I guess he will join in a few seconds.
Yeah, he's here. Yeah.
So my name is Photius Mitsakis. I'm a senior lecturer HRM at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham Trent University. And I'm a member of the UFHRD Research Development Committee that Carol and Julie co-chairing together. And apparently this event is of high interest to me and I guess to any academic who is interested in building collaborative, research projects. And I hope at the end, to get some or to have some people joining our projects, those that I have. Thanks.
Thank you. For people who have just arrived, because there's been a few difficulties with accessing the link. We've just taken our time to introduce ourselves to each other. So Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks, Valerie. So Rebecca Page-Tikal, I'm assuming you mean me.
Yes,
Carol,
sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. So yeah, Rebecca Page-Tikal. I look after learning and teaching for the business school at East London.
Thank you. Oluwole, I think you just had your hand up before. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, my name is Olu Shokumbi. I'm from Worcester Business School. That's the University of Worcester. I'm a lecturer in HRM there, and I do different things in, well, my area of specialization in research is employee engagement, leadership development, and Brexit with impact in Africa. Apart from that, I also do some work in the media. Okay, so that's a little bit about me, and I think I'm also a member of the External Communication Committee of the UFHRD. And please, just before I stop talking, is there a possibility of sending this link out on our LinkedIn platform? Because a lot of people are trying to join, but the joint link is not working. I had to use the ID and the passcode to access this. So
the link in the chat. I don't know, Carol, how you can.
I've emailed it along the UFHRD Dismail list.
I can put it on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Yeah, if it's on LinkedIn, a lot of people will be able to just join straight from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jim Stewart, would you like to introduce yourself while we're just redistributing the link?
Yeah, I'm happy to introduce myself. Thank you. I'm Jim Stewart, Professor of Human Resource Development at Liverpool Business School and President of the University Forum for HRD. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for organising it.
Great, thank you. So I'm not sure what's happened to the link. It's one of these issues where I think, yeah, I don't understand these things basically. So hopefully I have sent the link via the UFHRD disc mail. So hopefully people will pick it up through there, and Julie's about to post it on LinkedIn, I believe. So we do what we can. Just wait a few moments if that's okay. But yes, thanks. As I said earlier, the webinar, for those people who joined a bit later, organised by the Research Development Committee of the University Forum for HRD. We'll say a bit more about the forum at the end for people who aren't already familiar with the forum, and other events that are taking place this year. So, so yeah, Julie, do you think we should make a start now? Okay.
We missed someone off.
Oh, sorry.
Poteni.
Oh, Fateni, sorry.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I'm a senior lecturer at Portsmouth University in the Faculty of Business and Law. It's a pleasure attending this webinar, as I said before. And Carol, many thanks for bringing from the States the certificate a couple of years ago. Thank you so much. I am affiliated with UFHRD, as Portsmouth is affiliated with it. My main research interest is talent management, but lately I also work on people analytics and gender representation. So thank you so much for organizing this event. I'm looking forward to hearing all your input, really.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you, Fateni. Sorry for omitting you. Okay, so I think
Ozzy, did you introduce yourself, or did I switch?
No, sorry, I'm useless today.
I wasn't sure if everyone was being introduced or only like a select few.
But, no.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver Crocco, but I do go by Ozzy, the nickname Ozzy. And I am an assistant professor in the School of Leadership and Human Resource Development at LSU, which is Louisiana State University. We're a very big, like American football university, but I'm trying to make it more known for HRD. And my key research is on international HRD, in particular in the Southeast Asian context. So, and UFHRD, the conference in June, is one of my favorite conferences, and I have been, I think, 4 times. So looking forward to June in Ireland this year.
Great, thank you. Yes, I think many of us are looking forward to that. Okay, so Julie, would you like to kick off?
Yes, so we've got some slides that we'll just run through, and then we're happy to go into breakout groups or stay in plenary. So I guess I just said to Carol, we're speaking from a position as novices, not necessarily as experts on international research collaborations, which IRC is what they call it. So we run a couple of seminars, webinars a year through the Research Development Committee. So we normally have one in January, but I happened to be in India at the time. And then it clashed with school holidays. So this is why we're here. Yes, it is recorded. So hopefully you can see this later if you need to. So our key questions was kind of how do you kick off an international research network and collaboration? How do you sustain it? And what kind of practical tips might we have for doing this within the UFHRD community? So it's great that Fotios, already you suggested maybe we collaborate with you on your project. And Ozzy, I didn't realize till I looked at some literature this morning that you are a particular expert in Southeast Asia. So hopefully by the end of today, we'll have a research project or ideas. And Palvi, I think, is trying to join us from Jammu. Hi, Palvi. We met recently. Would you like to introduce yourself? If you take yourself off mute. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, hi, everyone. This is Dr. Palvi Arora from University of Jammu. So I'm an assistant professor at the International Center and really keen to join this, this today's webinar to know more about how international collaborations can really be used as a tool. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Okay, nice to see you, Palvi. Yeah, so I guess what are the benefits? What are the potential pitfalls? And we're looking at our case study, which is fairly new. Over the summer, we put the bid together, and we're kicking off the interviews shortly relating to medical leadership in India and England. So I'd just like to I guess we should all do literature reviews before we try and talk about issues to frame our ideas. So just looking at what publishers say about international research teams and collaborations, I think this is kind of pretty obvious, but being clear about schedules, responsibilities, having regular communications, clear about what the outcomes are meant to be in terms of publications, co-authorship. They also made the important point, I guess, about keeping relationships formal. I guess you can be sort of too informal, too forgiving about missing deadlines. So obviously it is a working relationship too, and being patient, perhaps with co-authors in different parts of the world. And there are practicalities, obviously, about budgets if you have a funded research. So we're having issues on our current project with AIIMS looking at the budget quite differently from UCL, which I'm sure Kamal will explain later. And I guess we're seeing issues with various parts of the world, like China, particularly in science, with issues of intellectual property and cybersecurity, which probably isn't an HRD issue. And I think to put it in overall context, the first citation I put here is just looking at patterns of research collaborations. And when I look at the Research Excellence Framework impact case studies, I remember looking at one in 2014, and Cambridge had only 3, but they were all like huge, big projects with multiple authors from industry, from all parts of the world. So Marek Kwajek has quite a few publications talking about the huge growth in international research collaborations. And I guess with the pandemic, in some ways, it made it a lot easier in some respects to collaborate across borders. I remember years ago, Arnaud de Meyer at Cambridge, Judge Business School, saying how important it was to build these ecosystems of collaborations, particularly from his backgrounds in engineering. And then he went on to Singapore Management University, built a very successful university from really nothing there, and how it shot up in rankings because of its research. And then there are these very well-established, huge studies across multiple countries in the HRM field, like Cranfield, the Cranet survey, and the Globe study looking at leadership. So Emma Parry, who's chair of the British Academy of Management, gave a talk I remember going to a while ago about a very longitudinal study of this large-scale collaborations and successive researchers involved in that. And then in terms of innovations, particularly in the health field, I've just come back from 2 weeks in Saudi with students looking at actually end-of-life care in the systems there and workforce issues. And Emma Bell with Alan Bryman had a very nice article in British Management Journal quite a while ago about medical ethics being applied to business school scholars, which was kind of over the top, kind of inappropriate. We're more likely to be harmed ourselves if we go and interview a CEO of a major company and we get it wrong than perhaps the CEO. But the issues of working with vulnerable people, community, participatory action research with patients, I think is interesting as well. How you get the voice of people on the front line who aren't in top positions necessarily. There's another article in Science. I think there's a lot to be learned from science research policy journals about sustainability of these research collaborations, how it's important for sustainable development goals and addressing these wicked problems, not just local issues. I remember John Saunders at Aston Business School once saying there's no such thing as Yorkshire physics. Physics is physics wherever you go. So balance between looking at very local case studies and then generalizing and doing more global studies. And this huge economy of international research getting international funding. And clearly also there are subject-specific topics like researching IHRD, International Human Resource Development. You can't do that on your own on an island somewhere. You have to have collaborators or look beyond your own HRD and globalizing HRD. And then finally, the issues of who is doing this international research. So with Emily Yarrow, we've written a couple of articles about who actually gets access to impact case study opportunities and the issue of glass fences. So women sometimes are too busy teaching and doing pastoral care. They don't have time to go out and do research, or other underrepresented groups. So I think that's very important. And also the issue of the dominance of Western Anglo sphere journals, so US publications, and how do you work with other parts of the world without kind of imposing Western values, but helping colleagues publish in these Western dominated journals. So the hybrid spaces in Indian Business School is a very well cited article in AMLI. And then I think at a very micro level, Robin Thomas and her colleagues in Finland had a very interesting article about reflexivity. What's it like to be part of an international research team and the kind of frustrations and power dynamics working in international teams at a very individual level? So before I hand over to Kamal, I just wanted to kind of give some reflections from myself and why I'm kind of interested in this topic. So I guess I was born in Wales and couldn't get out of Wales quick enough at 18. I've always been aware of other languages and different nations. So I studied Russian as an undergraduate. So as part of that, I had to live in Minsk, of all places, and in Moscow for a while. I've always kind of, if anyone says, does anyone want to go to Hanoi or out to Mongolia, I'm always the first to put their hand up. So I guess there is a sort of mindset of people who really are interested in other parts of the world. So I worked at School of Oriental African Studies for a while, and as a manager, and we were running distance learning programs in finance and economics. So it was great to actually visit places that I'd never go to, like Mozambique, Cambodia. And that really got an appetite when I was managing a chemistry department at UCL. I'd see these people hauling in these huge grants of international projects in science. And that really gave me personally a taste for, any opportunity, visiting scholarships, an EU grant I had on HRM and regional SMEs, which was massively frustrating at times, but hugely rewarding at other times. And I guess, it's also hugely demanding on your time. So just going back to the beginning, I remember being in Cambridge and Christoph Locke, who was head of the business school at the time, said, never waste. I think I said, that should be never waste a teaching opportunity to showcase your research, and never waste an opportunity to collect data when you're teaching. And I think sometimes we do international recruitment visits that may be nothing to do with research necessarily, but you can find a way of finding research. And then as a counter argument, Signa, which is a women's network that Will Housing at Middlesex runs, which has about 300 women scholars from around the world. There was a talk recently by Olga Ryazanova from Maynooth, questioning whether, actually going for funded research projects is a waste of time and effort. The amount of effort you have to put in for reporting, budgeting, and I guess similarly international research, it takes a huge amount of goodwill and energy to sustain some of these activities. And sometimes you think, maybe I should just lock myself up in the library and just write a paper. It would be much quicker, but probably much less enriching. Thankfully, we've got this research project. So, it's a small scale, it's £5,000 on each side. So it's not massively, it's only for a year. So we'll explain that in a moment. And I guess we're all talking about sustainable development goals. So how do you make sure you're actually in these international projects contributing locally to your local population as well as regionally, nationally, and not just, I guess, globally? So maybe I'll just stop for a minute. Any thoughts on any of those before I hand over to Kamal? Feel free to butt in. I have a learning technologist who said never talk for more than 15 minutes without interaction. So
Can't see any questions on the chat either, Julie. So
all right, okay, all right. I'll hand over to Kamal. Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, hi Julie, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so very much. The fantastic, you have set the stage, and I'm very happy with the way you have started this session. And I'm sure that the literature review which you have presented, I will go through all these papers and see what can be of our use with regard to this study as well as the future studies. Would you like to play this video, or this is just a slide? I don't know.
This is just a
Oh, this is just a video. Okay. Thank you. I must say that Julie has put a lot of efforts to make this video, and I was sure that this video will be played, but that's fine, no problem. So giving you a little background about that, how this study was conceived and how we get into this collaboration. I was in Oxford when for a Shielding Fellowship, and as a part of my fellowship, I was supposed to write a project, and since I don't know anything other than medical leadership, so I thought that I should write my project on medical leadership only. And then I had a call with Armit Kirsten of the FMLM, the Faculty of Medical Leadership and Management, and I discussed this idea with Kirsten, and she liked the idea, and somehow I got in touch or in connection with Julie, and we were all on the same page. So next slide, please, Julie. Then I'll be more this thing. Yeah. So I come from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. It's like one of the oldest medical university hospital in our country, the most prestigious, we believe. It was established in 1956, and we say that there are the three pillars of our institute, which one is education, patient care, and research. So all three are very important, and we try to address all three components to the best of our abilities. It is considered as the top medical college in India's institutional ranking framework for the last many years. Next, please. Yeah, so this is the ranking chart just for reference. Next, please, Julie. Yeah, so just my LinkedIn profile, nothing very great. Thank you. Next. Yeah. Okay. Julie, you want to say about this?
Yeah, a little bit about ourselves. So I guess we're a 200-year-old almost university, and very strong on medical health and social science. So coming in as a brand new business school, we just had our first cohort this year, actually, of about 350 students across various programs, and just launching a PhD health and a DBA health program. I guess it's during the pandemic too, people don't meet very much face to face. And it's like, how on earth do I find collaborators, PhD students in this university with a really good medical school, very good pharmacy, School of Pharmacy, dentistry. And I have been at UCL before. And just by chance, we had I'm director of the MBA health program, and we have 2-week study visits every January to different countries in the program. So I was going to Saudi. My deputy director of the MBA program is from India. So she was taking a group of students to India, and someone else was taking students to Egypt. So somehow, I don't really know how it happened actually, Kamal, we got in touch with you about coming to visit, I think. And I guess in terms of matching institutions, although clearly the business school has no track record at all, as a startup, the university does. So thankfully, there already was an MOU between AIIMS Delhi and UCL. And UCL is terrible in terms of, well, I shouldn't say terrible, but very, very diligent about signing MOUs. So they don't sign MOUs very carefully. So if I want to get an MOU going, it's a huge effort, and usually at the business school level and not at the university level. So it's fantastic that one is already in place. And then I was able to talk to the vice provost, who's international, who's responsible for links with South Asia, and make connections through there. I guess the issue is that not many people see each other still so much following the pandemic. So it's not like I'm bumping into these people every day necessarily. So it's great that we actually got this funding somehow miraculously in September. I think it was a really busy time. There's like so many that are issued every year by funding from AIIMS New Delhi and UCL. And as soon as we got it, actually almost the same day or the same week, we'd already put in places, even if we weren't going to get it, we had already sort of committed to doing things together. So Kamal, would you like to continue the story?
Yeah, I specifically remember it was our research day, and once in a year we conduct our annual research day at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And I was part of the organizing team, and it was a big event, but that was the last date to submit our project proposal under the AIIMS UCL scheme. So I still remember that during whatever little time I was getting, I was just working on the project proposal, and by the last day I submitted. And thankfully, we already have an MOU with UCL, as Julie told, and our project got through. Of course, then we spoke about this hybrid entrepreneurial and the inclusive leadership in the FMLM conference, which happened online this year in November. FMLM is, as you all know, FMLM is a very prestigious forum as far as medical leadership is concerned in the UK. And I have been fortunate to speak in this forum for the last 4 years, since 2019. So this is how I and Julie connected together, and we started exploring the possibilities of having some good work together in terms of our collaboration and in the area of leadership and human resource and all. Yeah, then this is also interesting that AIIMS Jammu, Pallavi is from Jammu, she knows better. I have been working with Monash University in the last couple of years, published a few papers with the Monash Business School. So Professor Amrik Sohel, if you see that the picture in the center, he is a colleague, and he told me that their group will be visiting India sometimes in this January, February. So we organized one workshop on building lean, green and digital hospitals, first in AIIMS New Delhi on 30th of January, which Julie was also there. This was the conference which we had on building lean, green and data-driven hospitals. And then on the 2nd, I believe that we were in Jammu and we conducted a similar workshop in Jammu. So this is a photograph from Jammu, and I don't know whether we can, yeah. So this is the photograph from AIIMS Jammu that Julie and I and our colleagues from Monash Business School were there. We had fantastic workshops, some lectures, and visit to the new AIIMS campus coming up in the Jammu. So this was like very fruitful collaboration, and there were about 70 faculty members from those who have recently joined AIIMS Jammu from different parts of the country, from diverse profiles, majority medical doctors. And we ran a workshop on medical leadership in this forum, and people were so happy and enthusiastic. You know, medical leadership is not a very popular terminology when it comes to developing world or specifically about India. but they were very excited about the concept, and I think this was the first time that they got a little understanding of what is medical leadership and why it is important in the context of Indian healthcare system. Yeah, so I don't know whether you want to play this or it's just a snapshot.
It's just showing, yeah.
Yeah. Julie,
so
please.
I guess there's a lot of serendipity. So I guess that's one of the lessons or tips that, so a part of the bid I'd put, I've never been to India, I don't know why. And I'd put in, like, we would each visit each other's countries and we would run workshops. And the only time that kind of made sense was like January. So I can't possibly. And I said to Kamal, when is a good time? And he said, well, I've got this Monash team coming out from Australia. Melbourne, I think, was the longest lockdown in the planet. So it was the first international visit, although they'd made visits before. Like, they have road shows around India. He said, look, we're running this Monday workshop with the Melbourne crew from Monash. Maybe we could do something together. So we did this Lean Green Digital. I did a bit of that. And then we prioritized our medical leadership project. And the really interesting thing about comparing countries is that about 80% of CEOs of hospitals in the UK are social scientists. They're non-medics. Whereas the opposite is the case in India. Most CEOs of hospitals are clinicians, are doctors. So complete opposite way of leading hospitals. So that sparked our particular interest about the contrast. But jumping on the bandwagon of Monash University's visit, I was able to go to Jammu, which hadn't crossed my mind at all, and meet people from IIT, which is a prestigious technological university, and IIM. And the great thing about Jammu is it's small. So we were able to access faculty there. And actually, at the end of a long day, we were wondering, how do we optimize our questionnaire? And we just gave them the top 5 questions. And because of technological reasons, we thought maybe writing English, you thought, would be more effort. Using a QR code, it actually gave them a whole ton of paper on a conference about green management, and we just got them to write all their answers physically. So we got, in half an hour, a huge amount of data from being in the same hotel room together and just building up that goodwill. So we hadn't really planned that at the outset, but we kind of piggybacked on top of another trip, which was great. So maybe there's possibilities in future to work with our Australian colleagues too. I'll hand back to you, Kamal, about the actual project.
Yeah, as Julie mentioned that in the UK context, the majority of the hospital CEOs are not clinicians, and it is completely opposite in the Indian context, where majority of the executive directors or the directors of the medical universities specifically are doctors, I have, as a part of my doctoral research, I have conducted a study called a study to assess leadership competencies of medical doctors in India. And we have found that the doctors in India suffer significant leadership competency gaps. We used the NHS Medical Leadership Competency Framework for our study and published in some international journals. But the good thing, the 2 good things about the study highlighted were that the doctors in India perceive need for leadership development programs. And this is what we re-established the fact when we ran the workshop in the Jammu, that when we asked them that, do you want to attend a leadership development program? The majority of the participants said yes, they are willing to attend the medical leadership development program. And I think that is the area where medicine and management, they meet together. So that is a good way of collaborating with UCL Global Business School for Health and AIIMS being a pure medical university. So I think that this project is very critical, especially in the Indian context, because our National Health Policy 2017, which came in 2017, now provide us the national mandate to direct our efforts towards leadership capacity building in our healthcare system. And as you know that India is a growing economy, and our healthcare system has been broken for many years. But right now, the policy makers are putting efforts to strengthen our healthcare system by two very major national public health reforms. We call them Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Seva Suraksha Yojana in Hindi. But that is basically the Prime Minister's project to invest into public health system of our country. You know, so I think, but I believe that without investing into leadership capacity building in our healthcare system, there's a great chance that these public health reforms will not be possibly able to achieve their desired objectives, because of lack of healthcare management capacity in our healthcare system. So that is why we wanted to explore that what are the challenges for the medical leaders in our healthcare system when it comes to gender, when it comes to resources, when it comes to training and all. And that is why we have designed this project with UCL, and we are trying to explore more about the medical leadership scenario in our Indian context. And we really look forward to learn from, because a lot of work has been done in the area of medical leadership in the England or in the English context, especially NHS Medical Leadership Academy or NHS leadership frameworks, or FMLM is there. So we wanted to have some knowledge mobilization or to learn from the UK counterparts so that we can implement certain things in our healthcare system through developing some frameworks or through some medical leadership development programs for our medical doctors in India.
Yeah, and then from the English side, I'd be interested in Aussie, understand the US context, but we have this NHS, National Health System, graduate management trainee scheme, which is only targeted at non-clinicians. So it's really odd. We would have a management trainee scheme that excludes clinicians. So on the MBA health program, which is this unique program that we're selling at UCL, 3/4 of the students are clinicians, and they have very, very narrow medical school training. They know nothing about management, nothing about leadership, private equity, which is a huge gap. And I guess what I'm really interested in also is the MD MBA model in the US, where medics also study MBA. And I was looking, it's very interesting on the weekend. I think the FT had an article about the Surgeon General, who I didn't realize was born in the UK, Surgeon General for Biden for the US, was talking about how useful studying an MBA was for him as a surgeon and how it's helped in his executive role currently. So I think that's quite fascinating. Why don't we have these MD MBA programs, or why don't we have something about managing and leading human capital development and so on in med schools? So that's a kind of big question. So this is where we got our money from. There was at UCL AIIMS. I'm trying to get a website for our own project, but that's proving impossible. Nevertheless, one can live in hope. As Kamal said, we're trying to get out there. As we're collecting data, we're trying to force ourselves to do some presentations. So we've already done this one online with FMLM. We've done the presentations in Delhi and Jammu about conceptualizing our project, just to kind of get some feedback, and started to collect data. These are our kind of key questions that we're looking at. So I've tested those out with my own students, and we're going through the ethics and doing more interviews in the UK soon. We're also trying to raise awareness, visibility of our project. So the Lancet has regional publications. So Southeast Asia, we have a blog under review. Also actually working with students. So I did have some students who went quite separately to India, and we involved a student, a Spanish doctor, actually family doctor, who wants to do a PhD, who's on my program. He came in as part of the writing team for this blog that we've written for the Lancet, and he put in a paper for HRD conference as well, which is great because we didn't have the energy to do that at that time. So this was the group of students who went to India in January. I wasn't involved in that, but I'm pleased that one of them has come on board for our writing project. And like Elsevier mentioned at the beginning, there are kind of clearly issues about practical issues, particularly ethics. At UCL, this project is seen as low risk in a university that's used to kind of big, risky medical projects, but we don't have an ethics locally within the business school at the moment. We're starting to build up these committees and these practices. But I guess what's missing from all of these is goodwill and the energy and the the social side of learning and teaching and international research, and actually synergies like case studies potentially as well, we've talked about. So the next, after this airing, will be International Women's Day. So Kamal's coming to the UK for a week, and we have a conference, IWD, at the business school. So we have various people that, because we've got a gender angle, particularly as you might imagine, in one of the economies where women don't rank particularly high in engagement in the workforce. That is a particular issue, not only in India, but also in the UK. And clearly, India is hosting the G20 this year. So the W20 and various initiatives on gender, I think, is very timely as well, relating to our project. So Melinda Gates was in India at the end of last year, talking about women leading change in health and science in India. And there's certainly lots of noise from Modi and his colleagues about helping women in the workforce. So whether that's actually the case in medical leadership is for us to find out. There's a special issue, I think, in BMJ Leader, so we're also looking at that as an output. But obviously, serious journals as well, like Social Science and Medicine, is on our list. So we're using Kamal's visit to the UK to do all kinds of things that I wouldn't normally do, actually. So we've been quite indulgent in getting some top scholars in our area, do like a paper development workshop on the 10th of March. People we haven't really seen in the pandemic. I mean, they are all based in the UK, which is kind of an oversight, but scholars in our area, so from Warwick, City, King's, Cardiff, people that we would like to review our paper. We've invited them to talk about their own research and to help us with our research. And then we've got various visits to hospitals, various interviews lined up, really to have a week when we can fully concentrate on our research project. Before we go away again and work remotely. So anything else, Kamal, you'd like to add to our story? I mentioned the issue of finance and challenges in spending.
Yeah, that's just not a very great point, but yes, finance is also always a challenge. And since I come from a government sector, we have our own very strict rules and regulations. Even though I have got the money, but there are strict rules how to use it, where to use it, and when to use it. So I am having some little struggle at my end also, and I'm sure that English system has its own bureaucratic structure, not so rigid like India, but yes. But anyways, since we have got this project, and we are very much excited and keen to carry out this study, and I really look forward to have some very good collaborations with UCL as well as other partners, those who would like to join us for this project or maybe our future endeavors. I think that would be fantastic.
Great, thanks. But the good thing about your bureaucracy is that the project only started this month when you got ethics. So actually, although it's a year-long project, now you've extended it because I have to finish by July spending my money, but you've got another 12 months, so that's great. Yes. Yeah, and we certainly will be sending students every year in January to AIIMS New Delhi. So, and certainly the Monash colleagues also want us to continue doing stuff. So the urgency of doing a one-year project is very helpful for getting things done, I think, but also we can see signs of continuing this.
Yes, maybe if I can add, Julie and I are exploring the possibility to attend the BMJ forum in Melbourne in November, I believe, and I hope by the time we will have some data or some more information which we could present in the Melbourne jointly in November this year.
Okay, so that's the end of our slides, really. So these were the kind of reminder of the questions. How do you get things going, keep them going in IRCs, international research collaborations, and what can we do as a UFHRD community in education, business, and various schools that we're based in to facilitate this and maximize our conferences in Chicago and Dublin and so on to keep things going, and any more research webinars you'd like to do. So shall I get rid of the slides and let people ask questions or make comments so we can see everyone?
Yeah, I think possibly, Julie, perhaps if we've, there might be some questions or reflections that people have, and then those questions are really helpful, I think, in guiding the conversation. But thank you both. That was great. And it, well, as I'm in the middle of working in the management school that is indeed trying to expand its international collaborations, it was really very, very interesting and informative for me to listen to your experience, and I really the multifaceted nature of the collaboration. So, it's billed as being about research, but actually you were talking about teaching and other forms of collaboration as well as part of that international partnership, which I think can only make it the stronger, actually, rather than just relying on one thing and, a small number of people. So do we have any questions for Julie or Kamal, or reflections? Valerie Anderson.
Thank you. Just remember to take my mute off, so that's great. And oh, I need to lower my hand. I will do that. No, don't raise it again. Sorry. I suppose, Julie and Kamal, thank you very much, by the way. It's very interesting, and it's nice to have like an applied case. We did this, and then this happened. We weren't anticipating this. I suppose for people like me who have always struggled with getting collaborative international projects going, there are two issues. One is having the network to start with, that from which you can leverage an opportunity. If it comes along, you can grab it and maybe work with it. So any thoughts you have about things you've learned about just doing the groundwork for that network development outside of your own discipline areas? I'm very conscious in HRD. I know everybody else, nearly everybody else in HRD, but I don't know many people like Kamal in medicine or in engineering. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, I guess, would be your thoughts about things to look out for if you are lucky enough to work collaboratively as the project goes along. Where are the danger traps that projects can encounter? So that they would be my questions, but I don't know if I've actually got to go to another meeting at 2. So if other people want to also add their questions in, you could, it's up to you how you do it. So I'll just put those out there from me.
Would you like to answer that, Julie, Kamal?
Yeah, I'll answer that quickly. Yeah, I remember Jerry George at Imperial, he'd said you'd bump into, and I guess Imperial is perhaps easier because you're surrounded by scientists, but he'd walk down the corridor and you'd have these conversations about electricity in India, and then he'd write an article on pregnant women and managing this, and for AMJ or AMR, and you think, wow, it must be fantastic to do that. And I suppose it's like the strength of weak ties, isn't it, Mark Granovetter? Do you go to plastic? Suddenly I got invited to a plastic surgeons conference. I thought, what the heck am I doing here? But they keep hassling me now because I'm the only person they know in the business school or social science. So I suppose somehow manufacturing ways of doing interdisciplinarity. And I found when I was at Huddersfield, they had these pitches because they were really pushing interdisciplinary research, and you'd have these days and there would be like £10,000 on the table, and you'd have a sandbox sandbox pitches. I think some universities are doing this. And I ended up with computing and engineering and had to argue why they needed a social science. And we got quite a lot of money. And we went to Norway and a few other places. But the real danger is that we didn't get anywhere in terms of publications. So it was fascinating. But then, you know, in terms of the time and intellectual energy to make sure I got that in a management journal, I really should have built that in, and I didn't. So even when you've got the money and you've got some mates to talk to, that isn't necessarily the answer either. But sometimes I guess we are too comfortable going off to our UFHRD conferences. Maybe you should go to an engineering conference occasionally. I don't. There's no easy answer to this, and for ECRs, early career researchers, that's another tricky thing. But inviting people from other sectors, I guess management scholars do. You know, we have a lot of students with placements. They have to do management consulting projects. And so on Monday, I'm visiting a hospice where I'm a trustee, but I've got one of my MBA students to do an EDI project in the hospice. And it could be in the steel factory, but, you know, the context, I mean, forcing yourself out of in a different context, I think may be helpful.
Yeah, that's a nice example, Julie, because again, that illustrates when you've got, you know, you're taking that student to that organization. Again, that's that multifaceted nature, isn't it? And it's not just about, oh, here's my research question, let's work on it together. It's more, I can't think of the right word. It's more complex, I suppose, and more the links you have to make for a successful partnership, or even just to begin a partnership can start in a different place. Doesn't necessarily need to start with that mutual interest in a particular research problem or question. Somebody, Photius, please.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. Thanks, Kamal. You have referred earlier, you know, to that differences between the ethical approval processes, you know, in UK, in India, and elsewhere in the world. So I was wondering if you have any tips on how to overcome this, because I believe that many, you know, researchers, they don't initiate an international collaborative project because of these concerns in relation, you know, to time constraints. So any tips, or based on your experience of that running project, you know, that we could apply, all of us, you know, to future collaborative projects? Thanks.
And we've just done them separately, haven't we? But it is an issue when you move institution too. You get like ethics from one institution. So does this apply to my next? So go ahead.
Yeah. So with my experience at AIIMS, I think ethical clearance was not a challenge actually. We are a research institute, and we are more into biological research or the life sciences research, and social sciences is not a very attractive area of research in a medical university, I must say. And I think I am the odd man out in the whole system who is trying to make some fusion with the business school. You know, somehow I came to know that arts was the only project which we submitted with UCL, which actually don't fit into a clinical study or a basic sciences study, you know. So my project, they did not understand that which committee they should send it for review, you know. So I believe that AIIMS people, my institute people, were not very keen to go through our project proposal, but they told me that UCL people were very happy with the project proposal, and this is how they got the acceptance that this project should get some funding from India. So I think that is because of possibly they are not exposed to the concept of medical leadership in the international context, or possibly they think that other areas are more challenging than investing into leadership capacity. So that can be one challenge for me, being in a medical university, not in a business school. When it comes to ethics, it was a pure qualitative study. We are not giving any drug. We are not doing any intervention. We are just collecting data, carrying out interviews, and I think they were happy with this because it doesn't bother them as long as the drugs are not involved, or you are not touching any patient, or you're not taking any consent from the patient or their relatives. So I think ethics was pretty easy for me. But I don't know about Julie, if you want to say anything about ethics.
Yeah, it took ages. It's kind of, they just said low risk, register it. But it's like took 3 months. And it's like, yeah. But there is an issue with the students actually going out asking questions. We haven't got that in place yet. Yeah. But maybe it is easier in a medical kind of science place, because this is like nothing, is it? If you're not taking drugs while you're interviewing people, everything's fine. Yeah.
Yes. The only challenge which I feel was that even if I got the funding of say £5,000, I cannot use it in the interest of my project, but I cannot use it the way I want to use it, so they have strict budget heads that you can spend your money only for certain heads, it's the flexibility is not there. Though I wanted to use this money to travel to UK this year to UCL, they said no, the conferences are not allowed, you cannot travel. Though you have a research collaboration with UCL, that is fine, but you can't use this money to go to UK. So I said, okay, fine, I'll go with my own money. So I'm sorry, but I'm traveling with my own money this time. So these are the certain challenges when it comes to carrying out research in a medical university, focusing on the social sciences issues, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Before I forget, I just wanted to mention we did have some with Newcastle we're trying to do with Ukraine. And I guess that would be an issue. It's, isn't this great? Isn't this novel? And we did get some Ukrainian academics, and then the shelling, and they were so traumatized. They said we just can't continue. So that was an ethical. We just had to let go of that. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Jim, and then Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, and thank you, Julie and Kamal. That was very thought-provoking, so I thought I'd share 2 or 3 that I had. The first is to bang the drum for the University Forum Conference again, because what occurred to me was Bob Hamlin's work. Some of you may be familiar with, but he has had his research replicated, I've lost count, somewhere around 8 to 12 different countries through people he has met at the Forum Conference. And it's on leadership, so he might be, if you're not familiar with that, you might want to have a look at that. The second thought was a kind of, if it is a distinction between, I've done 2 research projects that immediately came to mind with UK colleagues only, but which collected data from, I can't quite remember now, but probably 6 countries in each case. So maybe international research doesn't necessarily need international colleagues in order to do it. And related to that, the third thought is to do with what we mean by international, and therefore what we mean by international research. I was prompted a good while ago over my annoyance of the vacuous phrase "world leading," which I hate. World leading, everybody's world leading in everything. To try and explain why it annoys me. And I use a sports example which nobody followed, nobody understood. So I'll tell a different story this time, which is when I went to Nottingham Business School, I applied for funding to attend the Forum Conference, which at that time was being held in a UK university. And my head of department said, but you only fund international conferences. So I said, this is an international conference. And he said, no, it isn't. I said, so what do you mean by an international conference? He said, one which is not held in the UK. So a kind of question for people to think about is, what do we mean by international?
Yes.
Okay. Lots of debates about definitions. Deglobalization. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah, Martin.
Hi. Again, just a couple of thoughts. Thanks very much for organising this. Again, Carl, and for Julian and Kamal for your thoughts. I guess I would get, I'm sure most people here would get lots of kind of inquiries and emails and kind of LinkedIn messages from academics, and again you follow them up and you kind of, you know, maybe read a paper or an article or a thesis or whatever it is. I think this is just my problem. There's more an observation as much as anything else. Is how do you sustain them and how do you actually get something solid out of it? And I guess my biggest issue is getting funding. Where do I look for funding for these sorts of things as well? And I guess, you know, you used to think about maybe European fund, maybe that doesn't happen so much now. But that's sometimes these things kind of wither in the vine because you can't get that. And I think we'd all like to do a bit more international work and work with international colleagues, but the kind of, unless you've got somebody from your university to back it up, then I think it's difficult to do that. You know yourself, you can do it, but it soon fizzles out unless you've got that physical contact and you actually go and visit someone or they come and visit you. So I mean, at the moment, I'm trying to work with a Polish colleague, but I'm trying to. I mean, I'll end up having to use my own funding, I guess, to get out there. But where do I go for funding? I don't know. It's just more an observation than anything else, and I don't think there's any kind of definitive answer out there. But I don't know if there's anyone's experience of where you go funding, where you look for that sort of thing. I don't know.
I was just thinking there, Martin. I mean, and Julie mentioned her university, and when you were at Huddersfield as well. And I think it varies a lot between university and how wealthy they feel at any one point in time about the kind of, you know, the seed corn funding that they're willing to offer. I know at our place, I think most universities are like this, we get this weekly or monthly email from the research office, and, you know, these are all research opportunities. And, you know, so sometimes, you know, for us and what we do, it's thinking, oh, that can't apply for that, can't apply for that. But then something unusual crops up. So with colleagues, we've just put an expression of interest into to get some funding for this. It's called the MINOR, MINOR Foundation, based in Norway. And they're interested in CSR issues. I think they're more likely to fund charities, NGOs, not necessarily universities. But anyway, we'll see how far we get. But sometimes, you know, it's in unusual places, and it was just serendipity, really. So it's not a recipe for finding the funding. But and that was actually a colleague in another university who found out about this foundation. We didn't know about it at Sheffield, but somebody at the AU discovered it. So. But yeah, it's almost we could have a little Google document or something with, you know, just load in the various sources of funding that we know about or hear about, or yeah.
Yeah, but it's easier said than done, isn't it? And getting anyone to do that. I mean, but again, that is just more an observation than anything. But so thanks very much. Thank you.
My Erasmus project, I didn't really try at all. So I had this like 3-year Erasmus funding, and the guy who was head of international in the business school said, my PhD is in Czechoslovakia. They've got 4 countries. They'd like the UK. Can you write a paragraph? And we just got in. But you could see with the EU, they wanted Lithuania. They wanted East Germany. They wanted kind of developing parts of Europe to be partnered with more developed parts. But they wanted them to manage it. So the Czechs led the project. And sometimes I thought, you're only buying me because I can speak English and edit sentences. So, but you know, if you're part of the project, it's like, great, I'm happy to be there, you know. So I was really pleased with least effort, but it's about who you know. And I just happened to be head of the subject group, and the international guy, I did favors for him going to do student recruitment. And he was the first person I thought of to go for this bid. So sometimes it's very circuitous routes, I think.
Thanks.
Just checking the chat whether there's anything in there. Any other conference? Any other questions or observations, reflections?
I don't know if it helps, Martin, but just to say that the 2 projects that I mentioned were both commissioned. So they were on the basis of bids to carry out research that some organisation wanted carried out. So rather than funding bodies, that was commissioned research.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for that.
And I was just saying, hanging on the coattails of developing countries, but also you can hang on the coattails of big science. You know, I've seen scientists coming with millions, but they just give a couple of grand for psychology or management. So certainly my colleague Ewan Furley at King's College, he'll have the management angle on antimicrobial resistance or something, and he can write his social science paper on that. So
yeah, and I know there's I know some colleagues in the US, HRD colleagues, who've been collaborated with engineering schools, for example. So the engineers might have got the research money, but they've wanted an angle from a social scientist, for example. But again, I think perhaps the structures are somewhat different, or that's a particular university that operates in a more interdisciplinary way. So it might be localized rather than something that's more general.
And then I guess not having any money, social science doesn't really cost much most of the time. So if we were to, like, between now and 3 o'clock, kind of say we have to come up with a research project, I'm sure we probably could, that we could just do desk research. I don't know why we have to see each other necessarily, or if we're going to research conferences, that should be why we're going, to work with our research partners. But Ozzy from the US, do you have a particular angle on this? Southeast Asia, you say you do work?
Sure. Yeah, a couple thoughts just based on the conversation that was made already. There has been a lot of federal funding from the government around training around leadership and cultural competence of engineers and other scientists, hard scientists. So there has been money about that. Sorry, my dog is eating his breakfast at the moment. I don't know if you can hear that. He's quite a loud eater, but that's one thought. And then, but yeah, funding for me, one reason I asked for that article about, is it worth it? Sometimes going after the funding is more of a hassle than it's worth. And it's just much better even if I have to pay a little bit of my own money, it's worth it, because that's better than spending however many hours it's going to take of my time, which is, as an American, I have to say time is money. So, then it's not worth it it's just better for me if it's a matter of a plane ticket and a hotel in Thailand, for example, for 2 weeks. I'd much rather spend it myself than going through all the hassle of getting a $5,000 grant. You know what I mean? Because I can live in a hostel with 16 bunk beds for $5 a night, something like that. So I'd much rather collect data that way and then meet over Zoom. Obviously, I think America is probably the worst place to collaborate with many parts of the world with the time difference. So that's always one of my concerns, is when do you do it? And I often have meetings at 8 or 9 p.m. Central US time, which means it's 8 or 9 in the morning in Thailand or in Indonesia or wherever. So unfortunately, that's always an issue. How do you do that? And my key learning is having regular meetings, and at the end of every meeting, when are we meeting next? Okay, looking forward to what are our goals, just to kind of make sure that there's that ongoing relationship that is being built, and set of expectations about meeting times. That's huge for kind of keeping those projects going if you're not face to face.
Thank you. Nilu, I think you had your hand up.
Hello, everyone. I joined a little late because I was busy somewhere, but nevertheless, I had this thing in mind that I must join in, because Carol is the person who always prompts us to join in the event. So I hardly miss anything that comes from you. Thank you, Carol, to keep us going. So my understanding of collaborations is that, for example, in India, and personally at my own level, I'm always keen on collaborating from the Indian perspective with any international partner that would like to approach. Nevertheless, what I have felt is that international collaborations actually are, shall I say, we are able to sustain those international collaborations only when we are in continuous touch. I agree on that. But at the same time, would it not be wise and it will not be correct to say at this time that it is not just about HRD, looking for HRD collaborators? I mean, those who are working in the field of HRD, is it not the time that we expand our horizon and we ask for interdisciplinary collaborations? For example, those who are in other domains wherein they might like to, have inputs from a people management angle or management angle per se, and they would like to have some kind of inputs in forms of policy or execution and things like that, because a lot of things might be mismanaged in various ways. So am I only I mean, just a kind of a feeler I'm throwing to this a forum, that will it not be wise that we start discussing on how HRD as HRD professionals as experts can gel well with the larger domains of even physical sciences, I would say, or the life sciences or the engineering background, and help those scientists understand how do we manage different aspects in organizational context. So this is just thinking aloud, because every time I have been to UFHRD or anybody I have met, and whatever experience I have had as a HR person, I personally feel somewhere we fall short of the lens, and we just restrict ourselves to go across the disciplines. So which is not happening maybe in case of shall I say finance. The finance, they try to venture into something different than what we are trying to look at, because people are everywhere, and I'm sure the scientists might want some inputs from the HR expertise as well. So I would really be keen, of course, to collaborate internationally with any colleague and in the area which interests me, and to set a platform across Indian continent for that matter, with my kind of network. But at the same time, I would also wish that something innovative in its own way, if somebody is able to offer in terms of collaborations from interdisciplinary angle and bringing in people. So I would be really keen on understanding those perspectives as well, because that brings in newness to me as a researcher, trying to explore something new which possibly for me I've never done before. So that excites to explore how to go about it. So I just thought to bring in this perspective. Maybe it's useful, and we can carry forward the discussion in some other webinars also on this. So at this stage, I feel that what excites me and what challenges me, I would more be interested in that rather than just going along the routine people management perspectives and just end up in a publication. So we must also be able to do some kind of collaborations wherein our work is actually able to contribute to bring in some change in little small manner, at least at a societal level also. So that I really want to connect to the grassroots problems of my country or the globe across. So that's what I thought I would bring in as my personal interest. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Neela. Any reflections, Julie? Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a real challenge for conferences going forward, isn't it? I know Ola wants to speak. I know we said we would do breakout groups. Does anyone want to pursue that in the last 10 minutes so you can talk to each other? Or Fotios, I know you were offering collaborative opportunities. So maybe Olu and then, yeah.
Yeah, actually, what I wanted to say as a quick reflection somehow when it comes to international, collaborations, research collaboration. Actually, I won't say something new. I would just say that be open, have your eyes open to opportunities. And that might suggest that sometimes all of us, we need to come out of our research expertise comfort zone, if I may to say. I'm saying so because recently I have joined a global research network doing some research on hospitality, on tourism and hospitality sector across the globe. I mean, we have Greece. I'm leading the Greek, research project. We have England, Scotland together, Ireland, Germany, Norway, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. And I guess I've just noticed that we miss US. Oliver, if you are interested. For anyone who might be interested, we have a link. We have recently created a LinkedIn group, so to somehow coordinate our efforts following what Oliver said about the time difference and everything. So you could check the GHRA, that stands for Global Hospitality Research Alliance. You could request to join and you could put your thoughts there, or if you are interested to join the team, you are most than welcome. Every day we welcome new members. And I guess, as I've said, if you are open to new opportunities, if you take advantage of new contexts, like COVID, for instance, or any opportunity, you may end up with a new collaborations. Just to quickly give you an example, I was invited with a colleague from Strathclyde last year to present our work on presentism following a recent publication we had at Work Employment and Society. And I ended up with that colleague of Strathclyde being involved in 2 more projects with another colleague for the education, the higher education sector. So it's just exactly what I've said earlier. Be open, get out of your, research expertise comfort zone. And I guess, later or sooner, those collaborations will come.
Thank you.
Oh,
yeah. Is he still? Yeah. Hello, you had your hand up.
Oh, thanks, Carol. I was just gonna say to Nelu that it's interesting what she's talked about, and that's why I've kept my email address there on the chat box. If she can catch that, I'll be very keen to work with you on whatever area you want to learn, because I have a lot of Indian students, and most of them want to go further in doing research in other fields as to something back at home. And I think it would be good to have a good link with yourself, and also to see how we can help these students. And some of them can even become colleagues later in future, because some of them are looking to become academics themselves. So my email is on the chat, Nelu. If you want to stay in touch, please, I'll look forward to that. Thanks. And
Yeah,
thanks for organizing this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Just seeing the time, Martin's gone. Our numbers are dwindling as people have to go to their next meetings or appointments. So unless anybody has any final questions or thoughts or reflections, I did put in, I think most of the people on the call probably already know about the UFHRD conference in Dublin, but I've put the link on the chat anyway. So even if you've not submitted an abstract or a proposal, the more the merrier. Please do come along. It'll be great, I'm sure. And it'll be our first in-person conference for since the Nottingham conference. So it'd be great to see everybody in person again. That'd be wonderful. In terms of activities that the Research Development Committee are organising, we may be having another webinar in April on the theme of coaching. Obviously, details on that will come through the usual channels. But if we don't see you, then we'll hopefully then see you at the conference. And I may see some of you next week at the Academy of HRD conference, which I'll be attending and representing the forum at that particular conference. So I'm really looking forward to that, because again, that's the first time we will meet in person since February 2020. So yeah, but just again, thank you very much, Julia and Kamal, for your presentation. It was great. It was fantastic. And let's just keep the conversations going, because I think one of the themes from the questions is that, oh, how do we do this? What are the mechanisms? And I think, you know, a mechanism possibly is events like this, you know, meeting people in different places at different conferences to keep, and you never know what might emerge from that. So let's keep our curiosity and our eyes open. So thank you everybody for attending. It's been great. Yeah, and hope to see many of you sometime soon in person.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol. Hi,
Thank
Jim.
you, Carol. Thank you,
Thank you,
Julie.
Julie.
Well, thanks all.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.